What are the biggest fantasy football takeaways from the 2023 NFL schedule release? It's time to break it down right here and right now as we close another week and begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. Welcome in. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. Every day, a special shout out to you checking us out every weekday. We bring you the show all throughout the offseason and NFL season, of course, breaking down the matchups when we have the games, and we do know when all the games will be played. Now we had the opponents for all 32 teams. Now we know the times of all 272 games on the regular season slate. So excited to have the dates and times with the NFL schedule release. We're going to give you the most important takeaways from that early for fantasy football. We don't want to get too into it in terms of playoff matchups and things like that later in the season because things change a lot. We know that. But based on what we know now and the schedule rotation, the flow of the schedule for particular teams, we're going to break down where the best matchups that we like with some upgrades for quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers, and of course downgrades as well if we're looking at some tougher schedules based on the matchups. So we'll do all that. We'll also give you a look at the bye weeks, what you should know about them. There are some Bye-mageddons this week or this season. There are two to look at for sure. Then there's some very soft bye weeks as well. So we'll break that down for you here and what you can do about those in fantasy football, ones that you might need to think about getting a lot of replacements for because a lot of key fantasy players will be off. So we'll break that all down for you. We'll dive into it. Again, subscribe and follow for free wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's start looking at the quarterbacks, and we'll do that in the first segment here. A quarterback that I'm going to upgrade here that I've liked as a sleeper is Jordan Love. And this goes really for Justin Fields as well as a younger quarterback. Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins have probably hit their peak in terms of where they deliver. But again, Goff and Cousins still have the keys to an explosive passing game. And this division overall, we know, has weak pass defenses, and that helps. So these teams getting those 6 games within the NFC North play. I think, of course, Detroit upgrade a little bit with their secondary. Chicago's trying to do that, Minnesota, Green Bay, but still pretty weak pass defenses to exploit. And also what you have now is some explosive passing games. So you could get some shootouts within the division. So all peppered throughout the NFC North interdivision play. It's really good here. But look, Goff and Cousins probably taper off where they are. But Jordan Love, Justin Fields have the higher upside, and that's what we really like about their schedule. So on top of facing all the foes in the NFC North, they'll get the NFC South and AFC West. So lines up really well for these quarterbacks in the North. So Love and Fields, again, I want to bang the table for them a little bit more. I had Justin Fields as the third best reality quarterback in the NFC for Sporting News. I think that's the kind of upside he has with DJ Moore in the mix as his wide receiver 1. He's going to throw a little bit more downfield. The running may be curbed a little bit, but we know he's already an elite performer last year, so he adds that passing ability here based on the matchups he gets with these divisions on the schedule. Very good news for him. And Jordan Love, look, Aaron Rodgers was a borderline QB1 last year, finished right outside the top 12. Jordan Love can build on that. He can run a little bit to give you that extra juice. He might be more willing to run instead of sitting in the pocket and extending plays the way that Aaron Rodgers did. He's a superior guy later in his career as a back-to-back MVP, doing the damage there for the Packers. Jordan Love is still learning, so I think there could be higher volume here as well. If the defenses are struggling, it also sets up, again, high-scoring affairs when Love and Fields or Love and Goff or Love and Cousins are all in the same field. So bump up Jordan Love for sure there. He's the sleeper that you look at that can rise the most. I mean, there's not much more Fields can do to go up, and Goff and Cousins still looking at some promising back-end QB1s no matter how you look at it. So really excited to see what the Packers offense can do. They added a lot. We know 2 rookie tight ends, 3 rookie wide receivers on top of Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and what they already had. So really looking forward to the Packers passing game and its next step here. And keep in mind, Aaron Rodgers, it didn't take long after the Brett Favre move on from Green Bay for him to become fantasy football relevant. I think you'll see that develop again with Jordan Love and a very favorable offense. I don't think they're just going to go into shell and run in Green Bay. So really like the Jordan Love. Another reason to like him more as a hot sleeper here in 2023. Another quarterback that always tends to finish a little bit outside of the QB1s because he doesn't give you anything in the running game, really nothing in the running game in terms of touchdowns or rushing, is Derek Carr, but this is a good opportunity for him with a better passing game. Now he goes to the best team, probably overall with the easiest schedule overall as well in the NFC South with the Saints. He's reunited with Dennis Allen, his first NFL coach with the Raiders. You get all the NFC South, those are some weak defenses, but so is all the AFC South. So I love that crossover between those divisions. A lot of Southern home cooking for these quarterbacks, so to speak, here that are playing in those divisions. Now, unfortunately, there's not much more that you can really trust here. You're not going to go bang the table for Desmond Ridder or Baker Mayfield, but it does bring a little bit of intrigue for Bryce Young here. Let's hope he wins the job outright over Andy Dalton in Carolina. That would be great because then he would get to go work on the schedule. A lot of favorable matchups overall for him, not just through the Souths here, but just as they cross over, they get to also play some teams in the NFC North. So a lot of good stuff there for Carr and now Bryce Young that I'm looking at as the potential. Again, I'm not going to go for Ridder or Mayfield. Same thing again. You want to have actual difference making. You don't want a quarterback staying at status quo based on what their schedule might be. But I think Young could be really boosted. Carr, typically maybe a bit undervalued, but pretty good weapons. It's Chris Olave the like, and he can go to work on a very good schedule here. So you look at again, definitely the NFC North and NFC South quarterbacks really can benefit from this. And while we're leaving the AFC South of this, there's a lot of question marks, right? We're not sure if Anthony Richardson's going to start right away or CJ Stroud or Will Levis. So really, you don't have a lot of certainty with those quarterbacks other than Trevor Lawrence. And Lawrence also has to deal with the first place schedule, so some tougher matchups there all over the board. And Trevor Lawrence is also pretty high peaked there where he can be as a QB1. So that's why we like again, the NFC North and NFC South QBs quite a bit for a little bit of a spike based on their schedule. Let's turn to the quarterbacks that are going to have tougher times. I think I look at the NFC West quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford trying to rebound. That's going to be tough. Kyler Murray coming off the injury. So 2 injured guys, as well as Trey Lance also coming off an ankle injury where he's fully healed. Geno Smith is the healthiest quarterback and most productive fantasy returning quarterback from the division. But downgrade a little bit for all these guys. You have the 49ers and Seahawks defenses. The Rams are still tough, even minus Jalen Ramsey with Aaron Donald up front. The Cardinals have Jonathan Gannon, so they should be schemed a little bit better. These teams are also facing the AFC North, and some of the stingiest pass defense existed there last season, including the Browns, Bengals. The Steelers should be better. The Ravens should be better, so those are intimidating matchups as well. So, yeah, it's a downgrade for all those quarterbacks in the NFC West for sure. I mean, 3 coming back from injuries is concerning. Geno might be okay because they've upgraded the weapons and they have got the best weapons by far. But Murray, a little bit of question mark with DeAndre Hopkins and some of the other guys in there. Trey Lance, his own health, and the battle of Brock Purdy and maybe Sam Darnold in the mix here. And you look at Matthew Stafford, the injuries piling up, and Cooper Kupp was also hurt last year. So it might be buyer beware in general with the Rams. There's not a lot there. The passing game beyond Kupp to trust in Stafford, and the schedule doesn't help. Now, 2 quarterbacks in particular, I'm not going to downgrade Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's got a first-place schedule. That's what it takes. The Eagles have the hardest schedule on paper here in the NFL, but it's the Eagles. Jalen Hurts put up the numbers every week there for you in fantasy football. We're also not going to look at Sam Howell because we know we're not going to invest in him either way, but we're going to look at the 2 quarterbacks in between. Daniel Jones might be in for a little bit of a downgrade from his breakout season as a QB1 last year. So some potential for some other guys to rise, including Jordan Love into that status here, and Daniel Jones to slide a little bit. And Dak Prescott, I've already been worried about Prescott in the Brian Schottenheimer offense. He was putting up some big numbers with Kellen Moore. I think Justin Herbert's going to be boosted by the presence of more Prescott and that Schottenheimer type of offense. They're going to grind games away a little bit more with the running game with Tony Pollard, now joined with Malik Davis and Deuce Vaughn in the backfield. So Yeah, I'm a little concerned about Prescott and Jones living up to their expectations as QB1s for sure on the downside of things. So there's a breakdown of the quarterback best and worst matchups there overall. If we want to upgrade and downgrade certain players, you can do that based on our analysis there. We'll look at running backs and wide receivers in our next segment, and then we'll shed light on the bye weeks. We have all the information on what teams will be off over 8 bye weeks and when and what you should do to navigate them, including a couple of Bye-mageddons in week 7, week 13. So all that comes to here on the Locked On Fantasy Football Friday edition. Looking for a delicious snack, but don't want all the sugar and calories, and you need to try the best tasting protein bar ever. It's built. You got to try these. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and taste amazing. They're so amazing with their taste. You won't think they're good for you. You got to try these, all kinds of bars, puffs. And what makes Built Bars and Puffs so good? For starters, they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's real dark chocolate in every bar and puff. They come in unbelievable flavors such as churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. Yes, those sound delicious like desserts. I'm not sure how Bill does it, but these bars taste like candy bars while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better, they're healthy for you. Most Built Bars and Puffs only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, with a whopping 17 grams of protein packed in there to get you what you need for your day. And now you don't need a way to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars only at Built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. You can still get your specialty flavors. Don't worry, still at Built.com. That's right. But if you head to your nearest, you can walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate in bars, or the coconut puff, always a popular choice. If you go to Sam's Club, you can get a few more Built Bars with 13-bar boxes. They have the hit flavors, including brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank me later. And again, always get those specialty flavors at Built.com. Again, check out Built Bars, now available at your local Walmart and Sam's Club. All right, it is time to continue the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football as we break down our reaction to the 2020 NFL schedule from a fantasy football perspective. Again, thanks, everydayers, for making us your first listen every day. We have more stuff for you, breaking down the offseason on Monday's show. So looking forward to that as we turn the page here from the schedule. Subscribe and follow for free wherever you get your podcasts. If you're not an everydayer, we're part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team or your fantasy team every day. All right, let's look at the running backs that we're going to bump up based on the schedules. How about we talked about the South versus South crossover between the AFC and the NFC. Well, this is particularly good for the running backs because the running game defenses are not very good in the AFC South. They're a little bit shaky in the NFC South. I think the Buccaneers are a little bit weakened in that spot. The Falcons didn't do enough to upgrade. The Panthers are pretty thin on the inside. And the Saints are also lost some defensive tackle pop that they had, usually a good run defense the way that Buccaneers are. So that's good news here for the division overall. And you have really Derrick Henry. You boost him up. Hopefully he stays healthy. He can have a very productive season, again, working through his division and the other games on the schedule. You have Jonathan Taylor, of course, another workhorse that could be in for a rebound coming off injury as well. So love that with Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor. You could bump those studs back up here as former rushing title guys. They're back on track here to maybe get it back from Josh Jacobs this year. You also have Dameon Pierce, not much competition there with Houston. They didn't get it back. They have Devin Singletary, so Pierce should still be a lead there. Travis Etienne, a little bit more company there with Dearness Johnson and a little bit more in the draft there. But I look at these running backs, they should be rather well positioned to put up some big numbers. So I do like the AFC South running backs, upgrade them a little bit there for their numbers. I do not love the NFC East running backs. They get to face the AFC East and the NFC West. Oof, a lot of tough defenses there. So Saquon Barkley, a lot of road games, by the way, for the Giants. They have 7 early in the season. So that's going to be tough. They also have some matchups where they could trail, and they now have Eric Gray who can catch passes out of the backfield. Will they limit Barkley's role in that capacity to kind of keep him fresh in early downs, and will it be game scripted out? So there's some concerns there. Tony Pollard, just like Dak Prescott and Daniel Jones, along with Barkley, facing some tough teams there. So the AFC East, NFC West combo, not necessarily good for either running backs or quarterbacks, really just offenses in general. DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, that committee now replacing Miles Sanders in Philadelphia. A little bit concerned there. Swift and Penny also have the durability issues on top of that. So the schedules are also a little bit questionable there. And the Commanders, we're not sure how it's going to play out in the new offense with Eric Bieniemy. I think it starts fresh for Antonio Gibson. You'd think it would favor him a little bit more than Brian Robinson Jr., but still, that's a downgrade for those guys. They're fringe type players. So keep that in mind. The committee's there, especially with Swift, Penny, and Gibson and Robinson, a little bit shaky there, and Barkley and Pollard, a little bit of a downgrade in relation to other backs that should see a high volume. All right, at wide receiver, it's good for the AFC West guys here. They have good matchups all across the board. So you have Devontae Adams, again, facing the NFC North. Certainly helps there. So that's a big part of it. Adams has that revenge game against the Packers early in the season. You got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. You can bump up. Kadarius Toney becomes a little bit of a hotter sleeper. And I would say Cortland Sutton over Jerry Jeudy is how you're looking it up for the AFC West. So love that as a bump up for those receivers. The NFC South also, we talked about how their quarterbacks are in good shape with the past defenses they'll see on the schedule. So that's also a favorable development for Chris Olave working with Derek Carr. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin need that help with now Baker Mayfield instead of Tom Brady at quarterback. Drake London can benefit from that as well as the clear Falcons number one. They didn't get him help in the draft beyond Kyle Pitts. So you have London and Kyle Pitts helping Desmond Ridder put up some numbers there on the back end. Even if you're not investing in Mayfield and Ridder, you can look at their targets for sure as favorable matchups. And we'll see how it plays out with the Panthers. We'll see if Terrace Marshall sees a bigger role here or DJ Chark, but I would say Adam Thielen might be the key target here for Bryce Young that we can look at as a bump up. So those are the receivers that I like to go up with their value. Now we go to the wide receivers want to downgrade. Again, sticking with that NFC East theme. I mean, you got to face Sauce Gardner, the Bills, the defensive backs, the Patriots upgraded there. The Dolphins, of course, have Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard. So it's not good to cross over to the East. Really, you look at the AFC East receivers, not great for all of them either as a whole, but I think NFC East particularly has it rough crossing over. So A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, that doesn't affect them too much, but you might fade Brandon Cooks a little bit in relation to CeeDee Lamb, as well as just Jahan Dotson in relation to Terry McLaurin. We're not quite sure what you're going to get from the Giants receivers with Paris Campbell in the mix and Isaiah Hodgins and Jalen Hyatt. So Giants are already not all that attractive at wide receiver, so it doesn't affect them much. But I think the number twos there, Smith, Cooks, and Dotson, might be hurt by those fine secondaries they're going to see in the AFC East. The AFC North wide receivers have to deal with their own division and good pass defenses. So again, more of the downgrade for the number twos. I like Jamar Chase always because he's matchup proof, but T. Higgins looking for the new contract could be down a little bit. George Pickens in relation to Deontay Johnson. Odell Beckham Jr. not lining up well for him away from Rashad Bateman. And then look at Amari Cooper. He's fine, but Donovan Peoples-Jones may not have as many big playability chances here. So, again, a little bit of downgrades. We're not going crazy with this, but just pointing it out that these schedules are a little bit harder than we expect. All right, so there you have a look at the running back stock watch there in terms of the schedule and what it means. The guys that get a little bit of a bump up, a little bit of bump down, as well as the wide receivers. We'll close catching up on all the bye weeks here. Again, make sure you're checking out all the great Team by Team podcasts here all around Locked On NFL Network. We've got you covered, the breakdown of all the schedules that are all the teams and what they're facing and what it feels like from a reality perspective. So check those out. Again, they're also available. Subscribe and follow for free with those team podcasts, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, it's time to close the show. Quickly looking at the bye weeks that are available. So we'll run down them here. We don't have a bye week until week 5. It's the Browns, so you lose Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb there. The Buccaneers, you lose their receivers. The Chargers are a big one there with Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler off. And the Seahawks, of course, with Geno Smith, receivers, Kenneth Walker. So week 5 out of the bat is really a tough bye week already, so something to look at. It gets a little bit more manageable in week 6 with the Steelers and Packers, only 2 teams being off. So you do miss some running backs there and overall depth, but you might not worry too much about finding a replacement for Jordan Love or finding a quarterback you can play instead of Kenny Pickett. Najee Harris and Aaron Jones are the guys that you're going to miss most in week 6. The Bye-mageddon comes first in week 7. You miss all the Bengals and Cowboys, a lot of explosive players there. The Jets also have plenty of assets now with Aaron Rodgers in the mix. Panthers, not as many. Texans and Titans as well, limited there, but still missing some key running backs, including Pierce and Henry in week 7. There's no bye weeks in week 8, so we get a break there. Week 9, you get the 49ers, Broncos, Jaguars, and Lions. So again, a mix of offensive relevant teams here that I'm not thrilled about, especially with the 49ers, Jags, and Lions. We'll see how the Broncos play out. But Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey all off on this week. So running back plans you're going to have to make elsewhere there. Week 10 is pretty brutal for the quarterbacks because Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts are off, as the Chiefs and Eagles both have byes, as well as Tua Tagovailoa. So all those receivers that you have with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, A.J. Brown, and Devonta Smith off, and then the Rams, so no Cooper Kupp available either in Week 10. Week 11, we'll see, not as damaging, I think, for fantasy here because the Colts and Falcons are off, so no quarterback issues there necessarily with Anthony Richardson and Desmond Ridder. You're going to miss Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor. The Patriots also won't have Ramondre Stevenson out there as they're on a bye, and the Saints, you won't have Chris Olave available there. So it's a more manageable bye week than weeks 9 and 10 and week 11. You skip week 12, no bye weeks there. Then another Bye-mageddon. You have the Bears and Bills there. So you lose some key quarterbacks right there with Justin Fields and Josh Allen not in action at the same time. The Giants also not there, so no Saquon Barkley or Daniel Jones. The Raiders are going to keep you away from Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. Ravens, no Lamar Jackson available, and Kirk Cousins. The Vikings are also off in Week 13. So that's a tough one to navigate right near the fantasy football playoffs near the end of the regular season there. So, yeah, be prepared for that and think about that when you're drafting and constructing your team so you're not overloaded on those teams. Some people say don't worry too much about the bye weeks, but this particular bye, because it's late in the season, I don't think you want to be stuck with having a very depleted roster, especially if you're going to try to work to get in the playoffs. So something to keep in mind there, not to have too much crossover with these particular teams. I think it's okay, more okay in week 7 because you have time to make up for it. But here, this is the true Bye-mageddon to me this late in the season. And finally, week 14, actually not too bad. You have the Cardinals and Commanders here. Yeah, you can get by without a lot of that. Kyler Murray might not even finish as a reliable QB1 this year because the injuries and slow start. Sam Howell's not on our radar. We'll see how it plays out with the receivers here overall, but the running games are a little bit ambiguous. James Conner, you might miss a little bit, but at that point, we're not sure how it's going to go in the new offense. So definitely week 14 is the most manageable bye. So after week 13, the Bye-mageddon part 2, that's the most affecting one for fantasy football. You get a break there in week 14. So we don't love the Bye-mageddons, but I get it. The permutations of the NFL schedule call for those for sure. All right, for Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And have a great weekend. Break down that schedule and look at the advanced counting, and we'll catch you on Monday.